What's up, guys? It's your boy Ray coming at you live from somewhere. If you have seen my last couple of videos about what I think it means to run it back, what I think it means to kind of shake things up, you kind of have a preface for what I'm about to say. It is high time I gave my official prescription for what I think the Nuggets should do. So I'm not going to bury the lead. Let's just get into it. I think they should explore a wide variety of options for Jamal Murray. I'm not saying you take any deal, but I think in particular, if you can find an arrangement where in exchange for Jamal Murray, you get either maybe an older star player for whom maybe they're not as young or productive as Jamal is on a night to night basis, but you feel like the ceiling is still there. And at the same time, because they're older, there's a potential to maybe acquire some other assets along with Jamal. So I think about guys like if you can get a Kawhi Leonard, a Kyrie Irving. I know everyone hates Kevin Durant, but I think he's in this category. Anthony Davis, I think, is in this category. Guys who they are going to have wrinkles, but because they have wrinkles, because their timeline is a little bit shorter, I think there could be some potential to maybe bring in other assets as well, improve the depth of the team, maybe bring in some draft capital, something like that. Or if not, but for similar reasons, if you can bring in some younger players with upside, I think there's a lot of potential there as well. However, draft night, it's tough for Denver because I think there's going to be a lot of moving parts to this draft. Um, when you get to where Denver is, everyone I think has some flaws. I see a lot of guards, a lot of players who um, have real, maybe they're not physically ready, or maybe they have some hole in their game, or one of those things it might be. For example, I think about Dalen Swain as a guy who, while he is intriguing, his current level as a shooter and as a guy that he's supposed to give you some on-ball creation. I do wonder how his athleticism is going to translate, as well as if he needs the ball in his hands. Is that something that's actually going to be beneficial for Denver? Do you really want Jamal off ball when I don't think he's always been the best off ball player, and somebody on ball who's kind of a struggling shooter? I'm not sure. If it were me, and I know he's even a lot of people's ideal scenario, but this is what I would do. I would trade back. I would see if you can trade our first round pick, 26, along with the second round pick we acquired for Hunter Tyson, for an early second round pick, something like 33, 35, somewhere in that range, maybe 40, but I think that's pushing it, as well as a future first round pick. I think if you can do that, you would. To me, the gap in talent between pick 26 and pick 36 is just not that large. You can put that two-way player on. You can put that second round pick on a two-way contract. So I think it also kind of gives you a little more roster flexibility as far as if you want to add veterans, you can, and you still have a guy who could maybe have a shot at impacting the team in a positive way. And who is that player? For me, it's Trevon Brazile. I think he's a guy who has, you talk about the physical tools. I mean, he has the size, I think, to play a like smaller ball five in a more traditional context, run, jump, dunk, run the pick and roll with whoever our backup point guard is, or maybe it's Jamal. but where I think he'll really shine is in the short corner. I think that's something that he has. One of the best athletes in this draft. It's something I think he has the tool set to do pretty much on day one. Um, and because of that, I think he, more than most of the players will consider, I think he has a shot to get the minutes he needs to eventually establish himself and polish out the rest of his game. He has a really viable looking 3-point shot. I think is also really valuable in that, so he can flash between the short corner and the deep corner. And in some contexts, you can play like a 4-out, 5-out style with him as well. At the same time, he also can apply those tools defensively, even though I think he will need a lot of coaching in these contexts. There's a big swing in terms of development here about, can he get the mentorship he needs? Is Aaron Gordon going to take him under his wing, or Jokic himself, and any of those guys to kind of teach him the finer points of fulfilling the roles that the Denver Nuggets are going to need from him? I think it'll ultimately be on David Adelman to simplify his game in a way that makes sense for him. But I think it's very doable, more doable for me than a lot of these guards who are undersized, and maybe they can provide some of that perimeter creation that we're looking for. But if you pair them with Jamal Murray, you're putting Denver in a position where you have two defensive liabilities at the guard spots. And to me, that is untenable in any kind of competitive environment. Maybe against a bad team, they can't punish you for running two marks on defense. But I think any good team is going to make that less than viable. There are also a lot of guys who I think have that wing designation, like Swain, again, who, do they have a clear role in Denver? I think that is a real question for a lot of these guys. And for me, Brazil has that. I think there is a very clear line of thinking about, okay, this is how you could play 10 minutes a night for the Denver Nuggets this season. And sometimes when someone's down, that might be 20. And some, maybe in the playoffs, if it doesn't go well, you might not see the floor. But I think you're going to get something out of him in the short term, and potentially have some upside there in the long term. That's where I would, and so circling back to the trade I have in mind, again, 1 and 2 this year for an early second round pick and a future first. Doesn't involve dumping anyone's salary. Doesn't involve, getting taken advantage of over Cam or Zeke or anything like that. But what it does do is it gives Denver, when you talk about flexibility, I feel like a lot of the situations Denver has been in, they've been seeking flexibility in terms of just, if we cut salary, we have flexibility. Well, a future first, I think, could go a long way in terms of those same kinds of flexibility. Both if you wanted to ultimately dump salary, which is a thing that they could do, they could decide to do later, because at the deadline, that's really where, if they're going to duck the second apron and duck the tax and get out of the repeater, that's something you can do. You can decide to do that then. Or if you're in a position to say, we really like what we have, we just need a little bit more, we need our Ayo Dosunmu trade, you can make that deal at the deadline. And so when you go into the season, I think what I would really look for at that point is not an evaluation year, but an evaluation period. I'm talking about utilizing training camp, the first month of the season, maybe first month and a half of the season, as an evaluation period for, when I say the young guys, I'm not saying you should go out and make a lineup of Jalen Pickett, Peyton Watson, and Spencer Jones, and Deron Holmes and Zeke Najee together and just throw them out there and see if it works. No, it's really about thinking about ways that those guys can be useful in lineups alongside good players in ways that are going to make their role a little bit more clear, easier to adapt to. I'm thinking about, okay, if you need periods in a regular season context, especially given what I just said about guards who maybe lack size being paired with Murray, what does it look like when you play Jalen Pickett and Jamal together for Jamal? I think it's a good opportunity to get Jalen in a context where he has guys to feed, where it's not on him to just create for himself. And also a good opportunity for Jamal to kind of experiment with this idea of, okay, can you get off ball? Can you be more of a runner off screens and cutting and that kind of stuff? Similar thing, Christian Braun. I kind of want to see Christian in more of an on ball. Can he run point? I kind of liked the experiment that they engaged with last season, might have been the season before, of just giving Christian time, just getting the ball up the floor, getting more comfortable running the show. I think that can do a lot for him in his confidence and just him. Honestly, that's like the biggest thing for me is I just want him to be confident when he's shooting, when he's making decisions, because that's how the game slows down for you in a way. You have to be able to trust yourself in what you can do and who you can be, and be okay with sometimes taking a tough shot. Sometimes a tough shot's better than a turnover. Now, you can kind of go down the list of, okay, looking at like the power forward spot, we need Aaron Gordon insurance. You have a lot of options right now on the team already. If you draft Brazil, he'll be one of them. Deron Holmes is one of them. He's barely played so far. I think he kind of needs a similar opportunity, I think, to see what he can do, both with maybe in that combo forward spot alongside Jokic, but also in a combo forward spot, forward, center, big man, whatever you call combo front court player, alongside other guys. Like, can you put together a unit that's Aaron, Duran, and Spencer or Zeke or Peyton, some defensive option, in a way that kind of makes their skill sets blend a little bit better, and you can still get the passing, the shooting, the secondary playmaking that he displayed so far. Same thing for Zeke, although for Zeke, I would not put him in a position to. I would move on from the idea that you're going to run actions through Zeke, that you're going to put Zeke in the pick and roll offensively, that you're going to do anything more than ask Zeke to take corner threes and occasionally play at a dunker spot. That's not any disrespect to him, because he's a great defender. Have him focus more on being a good defender, and simplifying his role offensively. I think similarly, you can kind of go down the list for guys on the team. Julian Strawther, I mean, Tim Hardaway Jr. is proved to be such an effective player this year, not in the playoffs, but at least in the regular season. And I think it makes a lot of sense for Denver when it seems like Tim might be off to a Miami or to some other location, who's going to maybe he can pay him a little bit more or be an environment that he likes a little bit better. You could lose Tim and ask Julian. I know he can do more. I'm sure he can do more, right? He has his little floater game. He has a little juice, with the ball in his hands. I get that. But focusing on doing one thing really well when you're talking about these role players, one or two things that you can do really well would go so far, especially if those things are not being the on-court leader, being the initiator, dominating the ball, trying to dominate the game. If you can be a good rebounder and a guy who is a live wire catch and shoot threat, I think that's great for Julian. I really do. And you use this opening period of the season to evaluate all these things, right? So you get to the deadline, and you can look around, and you can look at where you are in the standings. You can look at the promise that you've shown. You can look at your health and say, does this look like a championship team? Does this not look like a championship team? Assuming we don't make any trades, assuming nothing appetizing presents itself for Jamal or for Aaron or for anything like that, you can go towards that. What is it, December 15th point, and once you get there, make a decision from there, utilizing that first round pick in terms of going further in for the season, or even dumping salary if that's what you want to do. If you want to just get off guys, hey, I get it. You can, um, by ducking the repeater this year, you can set yourself up for a period in the future that is going to be more spending friendly, right? And Jokic has a horizon, and it's coming, but it's not right now. You know, a year off, him maybe getting shut down 2/3 through the year to go get wrist surgery or just take time off, you know, and let the wrist heal, which I think might be just what he needs. Is like he just doesn't have long periods where he doesn't use the wrist. And anytime you have those kinds of soft tissue injuries, I think that's what they need. A lot of the times they're related to overuse. But you can keep your options open and remain flexible. Also, Trevon Brazil's really, he's just a really intriguing prospect, and I think he, um, circling back and in summation, fits a lot of what Denver needs: physicality, athleticism, personality, while also being a guy I think could play early while still having upside. Anyway, I'm hoping this sounds pretty good because I am on my way to work, but I appreciate you for listening all the way through. If it did not sound great, I'll catch y'all later. Y'all have a great day. Enjoy the draft.